Okay. Hi, I'm Paul Whitkay, founder of the Alliance of CEOs, and welcome to our latest edition of how CEOs are using AI. And today I'm pleased to welcome both our moderator, Matthew Swanson. If you've been here before, you've met Matthew. He's the managing partner of Silicon Valley Software Group. And Alan Descoings, CEO of Trio Labs, is our guest CEO today. We'll be joining Matthew for a conversation about how CEOs are planning their 2025 AI roadmaps. And before we get started, I just wanted to update. We get your feedback each time about how you're using AI and any results you're getting. And over the past 6 months, we started out as 70% of CEOs were using AI, had begun using in different ways. And our latest survey in November is up to 88%. So we're we've closed half of the gap between 70% to 100% usage. And those who are getting good or better results have grown from 50% back in May to 68% in November. So we're learning. So with that, let's get rolling. Matthew, it's all yours.
Great, thank you, Paul. And I'm going to share my screen and welcome everyone to our 9th installment of this series. This will be our final one for the year before we pick it up again in January. And we thought it would be fitting to reflect on AI adoption in the year and interpret what does that mean going forward? What can we expect to see in 2025? So we're going to switch up the format a little bit today, and it's going to be a more interactive session with our guest speaker, Alan Descoings, who's the CEO of Trio Labs. Trio Labs is an AI services firm that helps enterprises develop their AI strategy and then deploy Gen AI use cases. And so between Alan and myself, we both have some firsthand experiences here of working with companies. And so we thought it would be kind of interesting to share our anecdotes of where we're seeing companies find success with AI, overlaid onto some industry research that we pull together from sources like Deloitte and Databricks and others. So that's what we're gonna cover today. In terms of agenda, we'll first talk about kind of where did things net out in 2024. So where are some of the adoption uptakes in different business functions by industry and some use cases. And that will tee up our main discussion around, what can we expect to see next year? And specifically, what are some of the trends that will be important to keep track of as they relate to not just the tech development, but the business models and all those other aspects that are required to line up for companies to start adopting this technology. So with that, Alan, let's introduce you here. I gave that little background on Trio Labs, but maybe you could spend a minute introducing yourself, kind of what are your main activities as a CEO of Trio Labs? What keeps you up at night? What are you most excited about as it relates to AI in your business?
Well, thank you, Matthew, for the kind words, and thanks, Paul, for the invitation. It's an honor to be here. So a lot of things keep me up at night. In particular, right now, I think it will be the rapid pace of AI adoption that we're seeing, especially the enterprise players. So usually we've been seeing like corporate and enterprise as these kind of slow-moving beasts. But nowadays, I think we are seeing evidence of the contrary, of some technologies being very rapid to adopt on these kind of companies. So yeah, a little bit of myself. I'm in the AI machine learning world, as it was called back then, way before it was cool. I started my own career in AI in 2009, 2008. And I joined Trio Labs in 2011 as the first hire developer, then lead developer, then CTO for 9 years, and now CEO for a year and 2 months. And yeah, our sweet spot is actually helping companies come up with their own solutions to problems using AI as a part of the technology. But it's not always about AI. It's always about how do you solve adaptive problems? How do you solve business problems using the technology as a tool? So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and participating on this event.
Well, thank you for joining us, and let's dive in. So, the first topic we have is around where things are today, and to frame up this section, it's interesting to just kind of reflect on where things were 1 year ago compared to now, right? So last year, I mean, there was still a debate as to whether AI was going to be a fad or if it was going to be, something that drove significant value. And I think, we can all agree that at this point, it's an overwhelming consensus. AI is here to stay. It's it's poised to really drive changes, but people are still trying to figure that out. But just to throw one stat to start the conversation, Menlo Ventures came out with a report today showing that the enterprise spend reached 14 billion this year, which is a 6x increase from last year. So, companies are really throwing resources behind this movement. And so, first topic for us is, where are those dollars going? So, this first bit of data comes from a report from Databricks. They interviewed 1,100 CIOs about, where those companies are seeing traction. And some of the big use cases, big departments that are embracing this trend are IT, and so software development is, over half of these companies have live deployments of AI for code generation and what have you. But also marketing, sales, and customer support are seeing a large adoption. And then on the other end of the spectrum, some of the more regulated functions, finance and legal are catching up. So first, Alan, is this what you're seeing in your customer base?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in general, yes. I think that IT leading the pack is absolutely not surprising because IT generally drives the organization's technology transformation first and is the first to test and scale these new technologies like Gen AI. And also, as you were saying, like I think everybody by now has recognized that tools like Copilot are not opt-in for developers, but they're a must to improve performance. So everybody's using them. So yeah, it's not surprising that IT is leading the pack here. I think that also marketing and customer service are areas in which we've been seeing a lot of adoption in our customers. And as we're seeing here, like 40% of marketing departments have Gen AI in production. Very close, 39% in sales and customer service. So this aligns very well with Gen AI's use in content creation, personalization. That is a very quick way to see ROI. So, and adding to that, a lot of products that these people use on marketing and customer service already incorporated features around Gen AI. So it's not surprising that there's actually more use cases in production. What is a little bit surprising to me of this plot is that finance, for example, they typically benefit more from like automation and predictive analytics. So I think that seeing these comparatively slow adoption in production may reflect some concerns about like reliability of the technology. But with that said, if you add up like 80% of the interview people here, these leaders are thinking of using Gen AI over the next 3 years. So I guess that there's still opportunities to grow. I'm also surprised by the legal department. So only 11% have deployed in production. 37% don't even plan to use it over the next 3 years, which is kind of surprising given that you saw all these news about the robot lawyers and the potential for contract reviews and automating compliance tasks. So it's maybe some risk averseness or lack of awareness maybe of what the technology is capable, or maybe like it's regulatory or compliance concerns that holding this back, but definitely was surprising to me.
Yeah, same here. But I guess the what reconciles that in my mind is when I look at the landscape of vendors, we're seeing just so much more traction in those top sectors. So, I wonder if that's a self-fulfilling prophecy or not. But regardless, this is where we're at today. If we look more broadly by industry, we actually do see financial services and insurance, regulated industries are actually taking an uptake. Apparently, it's more in their marketing and sales and less in their core offerings. But I would ask, is this, do you see any other industries stand out in your work today?
Well, I think in my work today, most of the work that we do is retail and airlines. I don't see airlines here. I do see retail and consumer goods, and they have, I think I would say, a wide deployment of AI use case, and they've had it before Gen AI, so it's not really surprising. What I would say of these particular statistics here is like, look at the percentage that said no activity. It's like basically zero. So you're not alone. Like everybody's at least exploring these use cases here. Surprising that traditionally regulated industries have moving these fast. We're seeing also like energy lagging behind, and media like with only 4% in production, but 60% in deployment and productionization. So there's a lot to grow that we can expect over the next year.
Yeah, across the board. The only one I'll comment on here, at risk of getting into political territory, is this data was compiled a month ago and a lot has changed. It'll be interesting to see what Mr. Musk does on this government line item if he follows through with his AI automation for $2 trillion of discretionary spend. But topic for another day. If we look in terms of how CEOs are looking at value creation here, it's interesting. Folks are looking at this from more of a internal benefit, productivity enhancements, cost reductions, and very much less so on revenue, which is kind of interesting. Can you unpack that for us, Alan? Any insights there?
Yeah, I would say that as this technology is new and people are building up their mental models of how it works, what it's capable of, where it's reliable, where it's not, it's just easier to control across the board, and it has lower risk if you just do work on the internal facing aspects of your company's operations, right? So the external use cases are going to be much slower to come. They're going to come, but I think that there's still like some distrust, or there's still fears of things going wrong, as we have seen over the past years when some, like, remember the Microsoft bot that got deployed on Twitter and it got racist? Well, I think that, or the airline that will give some discounts to passengers that don't really deserve it or need it. So I think that there's companies are going to try to avoid these reputational and compliance risks that are going to be associated to external use cases. So therefore, they will focus much more on the internal operations as they're learning, and do these kind of like dogfooding to be more efficient. And only then, when they're certain that it will work, deploy it externally.
Yeah, well, that is kind of what we are seeing in terms of internal use cases being the guinea pigs. And it would be interesting to see when companies do get more comfortable with the external facing use cases, because that's where really revenue can be addressed, and that drives all sorts of adoption. So if we were to summarize where we're at today, lots of activity in AI across the board, across industries. People are investing in this. But if I were just to kind of like relate to conversations I'm having with executives, everyone agrees AI is going to be important, but it's still not concrete as to exactly how. And one of the challenges we have with thinking about Gen AI is it's a paradigm shift, right? We've built all of these conventions that are about to get disrupted from the way that we store our data. Basically everything today is in a giant spreadsheet. That's a database is just a giant Excel sheet at the end of the day. And then we layer on all these kind of rules on top of that with software today on how to send data to customers and to our employees. We have then a bunch of rules on top of that on how our employees should interact with each other. And this is the paradigm shift. Is Gen AI does not work well when you put all those rules in place. You really have to approach every different business process with a clean slate of doing things with unstructured data, right, with natural language, and so that's why it's really tough to kind of to pin down some of the biggest value drivers. But we're going to attempt to address that in these next set of slides and cover first, how AI is being packaged together differently to start to introduce some of those new paradigm shifts in how work gets done. And the first trend that we're seeing, this is what venture capitalists are dubbing as service as software. So, in the past, we're all familiar with software as a service. It's an acronym, SaaS, that didn't really exist 10 years ago, and now it's an $800 billion industry, right? Which is pretty incredible, that growth. And so the next frontier that VCs are predicting is that we're going to see this combination of AI, not just AI agents, not just disrupting that cloud SaaS market, but as we covered with AI agents in the past, doing the actual work. So acting like employees, and the implication is, well, now the total addressable market isn't just $800 billion SaaS, it's that plus this additional 3 trillion of labor spend. And so, if we were to jump in on this trend, here are some of the big employment sectors, folks that are getting paid 100,000 plus salaries today, where a lot of AI agent companies are trying to offer their alternative AI agents that can do all of the work themselves. And I guess that anything that jumps out on this list here that you think is top of mind for 2025?
Yeah, I think that I mean the addressable market will increase, but it doesn't necessarily mean like actual labor displacement. It might not just be about like cutting costs, it's about like relocating talent to higher value work. So I don't think that we're going to see like massive unemployment based on AI over at least the next year or two. We're going to see later. Um, of this list, there's a lot of work that all of these occupations do that could be completely automated up to some work. There's a lot of, even like in software development, that's like my background. So there's a lot of work that I, as a software developer, would prefer not to do. So yeah, that's where we're seeing all these extra addressable market of these service as software agents, in which the companies that previously relied on very human intensive processes like customer support, operations, or even like software development can scale their operations, but not just using tooling, but having the tooling perform the work for them, right? So that's why it's called service as software.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how CFOs end up budgeting. Does AI go on to the software and technology spend, or does it go into HR? Right, and I think we're still figuring that out.
Yeah,
but
I think it's gonna need to go everywhere, actually. Yeah, so every single business area will have their own budget allocated to AI tooling, and there will be a central part of the organization that controls like the building of internal tools.
Interesting. Well, yeah. So, if we look at kind of the landscape emerging, we are seeing these AI agents come out with offerings that are laser focused on particular business functions. Maybe each of us can just point out one to kind of ground this discussion. And I'll point out, a company that I've been tracking, Sierra. I think they're very interesting in their model. If you haven't heard of them, they just raised on a $4.5 billion valuation. They have these voice AI agents that automate the complete customer support call. So it's not typing with a chatbot anymore. It's a live dialogue, which is really incredible to think about. And I think that that represents the trend that we're going to see more of. Any examples that come to mind when you look at this list?
Let me see. Well, there's a lot of things around, like Jasper was pre-ChatGPT, let's say. It's a very interesting company. It's also like companies like Reggie. So we've seen the pricing model in which the AI agents are treated like employees with like fixed annual costs. And I think Reggie AI is an example. So they will sell themselves as the scale outbound, not headcount. And they will actually charge 50K per use case of the agent, regardless of the number of interactions. So, and they can have like 5 or 6 different use cases. So it's like they want you to directly compare the cost of their agents to what you would do with humans and how much you would pay those humans, which is interesting because it ties the pricing to labor displacement, and it has a high barrier of entry, but it's highly appealing for some because it's very predictable.
Very interesting. Yeah, and I guess that's kind of the what's being sorted out. So yeah, it's not just the foundation models that are being innovated; it's the business models, and we're starting to see the tried and true model of per seat pricing is definitely changing, and there's no consensus yet, but we are seeing some examples of outcome-based pricing. And, Alan, you just shared an example where, a company's charging, basically something equivalent to hiring an employee. Um, I'll comment on this where I think probably the most exciting trend is outcome-based. And, the reason being that, at the end of the day, we talk about driving AI adoption in the enterprise, and what's holding people back is, how can I measure the value? This is a new technology, and companies are experimenting with it, but really the I think will ease people's apprehension is when they see, oh, this tool will give me 10 new meetings a week, and I don't have to pay some random cost. I'll pay just by the number of meetings I get, right? And so any thoughts there on aligning these kind of outcome-based pricing with driving adoption in use cases?
Right. Yeah, I think you got it absolutely right. And I think the prime example of this is Salesforce. If you've seen like Agentforce and the recent conference, so it's all about like agents and charging. They're going to charge like $2 per conversation, and I think that will set market precedent that others will adopt. So yeah, if it adds $2 worth of value per conversation, then you keep it and you see how it scales with your workforce. There's of course like potential discounts for volume and all of that, but this really aligns their costs with what the customers are paying and the value that the customer is perceiving. So their costs are actually roughly going to be per token, which is not the same as per conversation, but it's going to be roughly proportional to the number of conversations. So it roughly aligns the cost that Salesforce is paying for it with the value that the customers are perceiving, and it makes it much easier to calculate the ROI. Plus, it has a very low barrier of entry, right? Just like pay $2 per conversation and try it out. See how it compares to your people, see where it augments them, and see where it doesn't work, and just use it.
And just playing that out in the C-suite, I mean, it just seems like such a easier way for a CFO to put it into a financial model. If you can measure exactly what KPIs are going to be hit and only pay if they happen. So that will be exciting to watch. And this, as we talk, this sounds like some futuristic trend, but this slide's here because it's illustrating that this is happening right now. And it's not just startups, but you mentioned the Salesforce example. Like that's the biggest gorilla in the room, and they're changing their pricing model to support this new outcome-based alignment that we're seeing some of the more innovative startups introduce as well. So wanted to spend just a couple minutes as we're coming up at time. It wouldn't be a 2025 prediction if we didn't have at least some provocative ideas to brainstorm. So without holding either one of us accountable this time next year, Alan, what do you think is the biggest kind of AI technology breakthrough we're going to see in the next year?
Yeah, there's rumors that models are getting not as smart as they should based on the famous scaling laws and everything. But I think even if models don't get smarter, like that conversation is largely irrelevant in the sense that there will be like massive value capture that will come just from the engineering aspects and the integration into new use cases and products. So and this is not going to be a surprise to a lot of you, but I think 2025 will be the year in which we start getting used to interacting with external AIs via voice, not just like the chat GPT that you're prompting, but actually getting a robot call you and that robot be somewhat smart and not the usual dumb press 1 if you want to do X, press 2 if you want to do Z, right? So personalized interactions in multiple languages, a lot of conversations at scale. Imagine being able to like press a button and pre-screen 200 different people that you wanted to hire, doing the phone pre-screening at scale at the same time and getting the results back in a half hour, and then like doing the interactions with your customers and collecting feedback at scale much faster. So that feedback loop, I think, will be very enriching for a lot of applications and for improving business cycles.
Yeah, we'll just leave off with it. I'll double down on that and say that I think that's such an exciting trend, and voice is really the interface that we've been missing, right? Like clicking around on screens is just it's not natural. We were never supposed to do that, and so when we finally get that voice interface, I think we're going to start to see so many more business users engage with the technology in natural ways, and it's coming very quickly. This is kind of on every AI vendor's roadmap is voice. So 2025, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the other I think would be like I absolutely have to name it like computer use. If you've seen the news from Anthropic, they released an SDK of the Claude model that can use a computer. So it will click around, it will read, it will pause, it can browse, and it's not just tied to the browser. It can use the entire operating system. For now, it works via screenshots, but it can understand where to click. It can use different software. So imagine that this technology can only get better. And imagine that it can use legacy systems that you have built for your own company. So things that traditionally wouldn't have sort of an integration layer to work with the AIs, and having an AI to use those systems and potentially add value and basically work on repetitive workflows is another way in which AI can add value even to legacy systems and processes.
Well, I can't wait to ask my AI to click on HubSpot for me. I'm sure other folks here can relate, but we're going to have to leave the conversation there. So thank you, Alan, for sharing your insights. And
Thank you
Paul,
so much.
Yeah, let's head to the breakout rooms, yeah?
All right. Well, thanks for leading off the conversation. One thing before we go into our smaller breakout groups, please, if you haven't already, click on the 3 dots on the top right of your photo and click on rename and put your company name afterwards. It'll just help everybody get to know each other that much faster. And we're going to break into subgroups where basically just very brief introductions. No more than a minute, or else you'll waste all the time just introducing each other. And then get into a few AI use cases. You should have a moderator in the room and meet some really interesting people. So with that, I'm going to open the rooms.